Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well on this Monday. Another request for you guys, if you have not done so already, please subscribe, rate, review, like the show, share it with your family and friends. Do everything you can to help us continue to build this audience. We've had a fantastic 2025 to this point, and the hopes are we take it to another level, and this is a great time to do just that. So once again, thank you, and as always, for all y'all's support. All right. This week in Chicago, Illinois is the NBA Combine, and Jagger Demin, the former BYU guard, is in attendance at the Combine. This is a big opportunity for him to make impressions on NBA personnel, whether it's executives, coaches, scouts, whoever it might be. He's got to go out there and show that all of his work, he's been working in LA since leaving BYU after announcing he was entering the NBA draft, to show that his shooting stroke, it's not broken. He can make shots at a consistent basis, but more importantly, he's got to go out and show that his skills, speaking of being a 6'9" guard with absolutely incredible court vision and the ability to set his teammates up with passes, all of that's got to check out here. And the bigger point in all of this is I know that guys like Kevin Young will be watching on with a keen eye, hoping that he goes out there and absolutely aces this job interview, because that's what it is. Combine events are meant for you as a prospect, so in this case, Jagger Demin, to go and meet with maybe as many as all 30 NBA teams and get them a chance to really kind of poke and prod you and get a feel for who you are. They've all seen your tape. They've all seen the highlight reels. They've all looked for any and all weaknesses they can find in your game. They've talked with your family, your friends, your coaches. Heck, they've probably talked to your school teachers. NBA teams do incredibly extensive background checks on each one of these prospects because they're looked at as a commodity. They're looked at as an investment. And I know that's really bad to say about a human being, but welcome to the professional sports model in the United States of America in this day and age. You're making a lot of money, and as such, these teams, these franchises, well, they're going to make sure they're hoping to get the best return on the investment they're about to make. I love what Jagger Demin is all about because he's a humble young man. I didn't get very many opportunities. In fact, I think I only had one opportunity the entire basketball season to even interact with him. But what he came off as is a very humble human being who wants nothing more than to live his basketball dream, and that is to play in the NBA. He had a really up and down freshman campaign at BYU. I think all of us can acknowledge a spade for a spade, can't we? I think that he had some incredibly high moments, and I think his best moments, quite frankly, came at the very end in that NCAA tournament run. He came up absolutely huge, shooting it pretty well. More importantly, playmaking, showing the ability to get to the rim. Everything he showed in the NCAA tournament run, I think, is what he needs to go out and show and then maybe improve upon it this week at the NBA Combine, because he is the first in what Kevin Young hopes is a long line of BYU players who end up at the NBA level. Next year, BYU is going to have AJ DeBonsa in the mix as well as Richie Saunders. Those are two bona fide NBA draft prospects. In the case of a guy like AJ DeBonsa, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that he's going to be the number one pick, presumably, in next year's NBA draft. So that's a given that BYU is going to have him in the NBA draft next year. But the bigger point is that Kevin Young wants to create opportunities for teams in the NBA to say, hey, BYU's got a really good thing going. We need to make sure we check out their roster and see if there's a guy or two on that roster who may be getting overlooked that we can pick off. Good programs will do that. They will find opportunities for their guys and get them on the path to professional basketball, or in this case, professional basketball. It could be for professional football if we're talking about college football. They want programs who have track records of producing high-level talent, and the other side of it is that talent's got to go and produce at the NBA level. Jagger Demin, I would expect that if he gets drafted, let's say he's in the back half of the lottery, so we're talking picks 8 through 15, give or take, he's going to go to a team that's looking to make a push from lottery team to NBA playoff team. That's the type of team he joins. And I think what he's going to have to prove is that he can hold his own early on in his NBA career. And what is that going to entail? Well, yes, he's got to be able to continue to pass it at a high level. I don't think that's going to be a problem for him, but he's got to be able to defend and he's got to be able to shoot. Those are the two things I think NBA teams more than anything else this week want to see from that young man. He worked on his body throughout that year he spent in Provo, or not even a full year, but He worked really diligently on transforming his body. He's still pretty skinny. And obviously, he will continue to work on adding muscle and transforming himself into a legit 6'9". I would hope at some point, like 220-pound point guard. But the thing is, everything that he has within him has got to show this week. And if it does, that's going to kick off what Kevin Young promised to be an NBA pipeline. And I hope he's right about that. I'd love nothing more than annually to see a guy or two come through the BYU ranks and find themselves in the NBA. We see that with these top shelf programs in college basketball, the Kansases, the Dukes, the North Carolinas. They do this on an annual basis. Can BYU become that? That's the big thing about what we're going to be tracking here in the next year, 2 or 3 for Kevin Young is, can he start to put guys in the league? And I think a guy like Richie Saunders, his transformation this past year, it had to be tough for him, I think, to pass on the NBA this year because, once again, Richie's an older prospect. He served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So when he finally goes into the draft pool next year, is he 25 years old? There's guys in that draft pool who are going to be 19. That's what Egor Demin is, a full 6 years younger than him. And that will push him down the draft board to the second round. And yes, I know that Richie's probably making up for it this year in spades with regards to NIL money versus what he could have made as a potential second round pick, but it had to be enticing to know that, hey, NBA teams are interested in me. NBA teams want me. Why shouldn't I take that leap? Well, the hope is that he goes out there and takes the leap at the collegiate level that makes him an even more attractive option when it comes to the NBA draft next year. The other part of it is, I think a guy like Jagger Demin, he wants to make as much money as possible. And once again, this is the world's biggest job interview for an NBA player. You're going to be poked and prodded. Your medical records are going to be examined extensively. You got to come off positive in terms of the overall impression you make on these programs. But everything I know about Jagger Demin is the interview process, I think, is going to go no problem for him. I think he is going to embrace everything that comes with that, and he'll go into those meetings. He'll express his love, his undying devotion to the game of basketball, how it's the family legacy because his parents obviously were high-level players as well. This is a kid who eats, breathes, and sleeps basketball, and I hope that translates through. And then he obviously, in turn, goes out on NBA courts, whether it's at the Combine this week or coming up this fall, wherever he ends up in the NBA draft. I'd love for him to be playing in Utah. That's just a personal opinion on the matter. And all the other thing about this, fingers crossed, the Utah Jazz get the number 1 pick tonight. That's just the Jazz fan in me that's hoping that everything we went through this past season pays off. But the premise is that a guy like Jagger Demin this week could be a huge steps towards establishing what Kevin Young has promised BYU fans, and that is to be an NBA pipeline. Speaking of BYU basketball, I'm looking forward to it. And obviously, we'll be bringing you updates on what we hear about Jagger Demin. It's a week long. It actually kicked off technically yesterday. Speaking of May 11th, it goes all the way through this weekend. We're going to talk. It's going to have on-court workouts, 3, 4, and 5 man, 3 versus 3, 4 versus 4, 5 versus 5 type stuff. You go through combine different things, passing, running, strength, all that stuff, and then obviously the meetings with the players and coaches. I've had people tell me that combine events, it's more about how you come off in those meetings with those players, coaches, and executives than almost anything else that you can do on the court. Because once again, they have broken down your film relentlessly, and it's more about, okay, we've seen what you are on the court. What are you off the court? Why do we like you? And so I'm very curious to see how Jagger Demin handles it, but everything that I have observed / heard about him leads me to believe that he's going to make a positive impression and hopefully, once again, take another step towards building that NBA pipeline right there to the Marriott Center in Provo, Utah.